So I want to talk about art of thinking here just for a little bit. Remember, the straight from the source would not only highlight some of the things that are going on in the school, but also want to talk about some things that take more than, a few sentences to answer, like what is the art of thinking? Because it is a big part of what we do. In the last year, 3 states passed legislation to require information literacy or media literacy to be taught in their schools K-12. 3 states. The last one was California last month, or in October. Delaware passed something earlier, and then New Jersey is the other one. As you see, the slide there shows New Jersey governor talking about requiring information literacy. This is going to happen more and more. It's going to happen more and more because the public is concerned about information, social media, some of the misinformation that our kids are bombarded with, and society in general, but I'm most interested in our kids. And so this is a phenomenon that's going to happen more and more, and we're way ahead of the curve. We're way ahead because we require art of thinking in the 85 NES and NESA schools, and we will grow that over time so that all students have some exposure, actually more than exposure, to art of thinking. I'm going to explain what that means. The reason why we're ahead is that the genesis of this started quite a while ago when a group of us from the Pahara Institute sat down and said, what should a new education system look like? And one of the principles of that was that over time, kids need to learn how to think and learn how to learn. Yes, they should start off with literacy and numeracy, no question. Reading, math, still really important. So all kids should do that. And they need some content, right? Some content knowledge, what to think, in order to put their critical thinking skills and synthesis skills to use. So all kids need literacy and numeracy. They need content knowledge. And on top of that, beyond that, as they get older, they need to know how to think, how to learn, especially in this fast-moving age with technology moving apace, new jobs coming online, new skills being needed. We need to help kids with how to think and how to learn, not just content knowledge. So that's why we're doing art of thinking. Here's the other thing. Here's the other big philosophical piece, and then I'll tell you what it actually looks like in the classroom. So the other philosophical piece or foundational piece, we could argue about from the time of Plato and Aristotle to John Dewey. Both of those philosophers, Aristotle and John Dewey, and many others in between, talked about how education is not just facts and information and content. More than that, it's about perspective, it's about experience. They would add philosophy also. But that's what a child's education is all about. I think about my own kids, and some of you have heard me use this example before. I have 3 kids, they're all grown now, but when they were little, they had a lot of advantages and they had a lot of education outside the classroom. Not just good schools, but they also had karate practice, they had swim club, travel out of country, getting a passport, eating in different restaurants, visiting different places, talking about politics with their parents, getting a piano keyboard, when they were little, playing instruments. We paid for private lessons, MacBook, camera, Surface Pro. We're not wealthy, but we have means, and a lot of people with means provide those things for their kids too. And I wish all of our kids in HISD could have the same advantages, same learning, same experiences outside the classroom as my kids had. And it's not just me. I mean, this is educational theory that you go to school, you know, some of you with the education majors would have learned also. So, what are districts doing about it? That's the question. Those 3 states, I'm glad that those 3 states are passing legislation and they're going to move forward. I wish they would, I hope they'll do it stronger than what they said they're going to do. I wish they went all out, because what they're going to do is embed the critical thinking, information literacy objectives into their regular curriculum, which means it'll probably get short shrift. With us, we're going all in on helping our kids learn critical thinking, information literacy, and problem solving. That's why it's done as a separate course. It will be tested separately. There are already being designed the mid-year exam, end-of-year exam for our Art of Thinking courses. So we're going to do it right. We're way ahead of everybody. And that's because we're more focused on year 2035. And this is one of those skills that employers are looking for. Problem solving, learning how to learn, information literacy, critical thinking. Those are skills that more and more will come into play and give our kids an advantage. So what is it? Basically, Art of Thinking involves 3 big things. The circles overlap. I mean, it's hard to put them in a separate box because they all intersect. Information literacy, I'll define in a minute, plus critical thinking. But the end goal is to be better problem solvers and decision makers. You cannot be a great problem solver or decision maker without information literacy and critical thinking. So it all combines. So that's why when you look at the curriculum for Art of Thinking, you're going to see 3 sections: information literacy, critical thinking, problem solving. There's a 4th thing that's hanging out there, and that's communications, which intersects all of these things too. Information literacy, right now, this is a discussion point. If you read the Ed Week and other information journals, you're going to find a lot of discussion about what information literacy is. How does that differ from media literacy? How does it differ from critical thinking? Those are discussions that are happening today in our profession. Basically, though, information literacy is just the ability to evaluate and effectively use information. Now, it includes aspects of learning that grows perspective, assesses the reliability of information, identifies bias, and improves the discernment and the use of data and facts. So it's a big area. That's why it's separate, and we have started in 3rd grade, and we will go through 10th grade, and probably beyond that in future years. So that's what information literacy is in a nutshell. Critical thinking is similar in that it is the skills related to evaluating and processing information logically and in nuanced ways. So you have to consider evidence and reason to make informed decisions. It involves your own understanding of perspective, which we call metacognition. And it's also about other people's perspective, looking at arguments, identifying fallacies of logic, and ensuring that students and adults, as we get older, also entertain philosophical questions. Because sometimes your philosophy determines what your decision's going to be and what decisions other people make. So that's a big area. That actually, this is like college level material if you want it to be. You have courses in college today that are related to what's on that screen and what's on the screen in front of you. I'm looking at a screen in the back. But of course, we take our kids step by step. Obviously, you know, 3rd graders are not going to need to know what a 10th grader has to learn, so forth and so on. But some of the concepts, like identifying bias, you can start in 3rd grade. The 3rd graders in our schools today are learning false equivalence. That's something they can handle. You wouldn't want them to learn about red herring or straw man fallacy or anything like that, but things that they can handle that are relevant to their lives, they can already start to grow and learn. Not to put anybody into shock, but the 10th graders will have to look at scatter plots and the relationship between scatter plots and accurate information. PTSD from statistics, don't worry. It's like, we're going to start them off easy, you know, with the scatter plots. And only ninth and 10th graders will have, you know, any philosophical discussions. The younger kids may not be ready for that. So that's what the art of thinking is. To boil it down to big buckets, you know, we want kids to have broader perspective. Perspective is good, and identifying your own perspective is just as valuable, right? We want kids to assess the reliability of the information they're getting. How many kids you know are just getting their information off of TikTok, and that's the gospel for some, right? And that's, we gotta do better as teachers for that. We want them to identify bias also, and identify our own biases, right? So, and that's a healthy exercise for anybody, whether it's a kid or adult. We want them to, I mean, this is an information age, and there's so much information. How do you discern how to use that information in a reliable fashion, and what information is coming that you need to use in a reliable way and not misuse? And then fallacies of logic, I know that goes way back to Plato and Aristotle also, but you know, there is good reasoning and then there's faulty reasoning. So we gotta be able to think about what's good and what's faulty. And then thinking about your own thinking, right? Learning how to learn, learning about your own mindset and your own perspective. That's called metacognition. That's just a healthy behavior for adults and for kids. So metacognition is another thing. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what art of thinking is. I know that's a lot. Let me just give you a few specific objectives that are being taught, okay? So this is from the 7th grade Art of Thinking class. This is the information part of that. So the information literacy part is what you see on the screen. So categorize statements as true, false, probable, unlikely, or unknown. So it's not just true and false, which we do in ELA class, but kids have to start getting used to the fact that there are some things that are, you can't really say is a fact or is truth. There's likelihood and probability. So we want kids to start to understand that. Recognize bias in writing, explain corroborating evidence, so not just finding text evidence. We do that a lot, but we need corroborating evidence. Understand how one's lived experience may influence his perspective. I think that's important. That's also why we travel, by the way. We want kids, just like you, adults, when you go to different places, you learn stuff. You learn how things work. You learn how other people live. And we want our kids to have that same experience when we can. Determine whether information is reliable and valid, of course. Determine the objectivity of the types of different information in different media. Understand persuasive techniques in advertising and marketing. We are bombarded with advertising, bombarded with marketing, and it's okay. I like the ads too, but let's understand what are the persuasive techniques, what are people trying to get you to buy or to engage in. That's information literacy. Critical thinking is a little bit different in that we focus more on the argument and the logic of it, and what brain research says has to happen for us to be good thinkers. So we talk about illogical conclusions versus logical conclusions. We talk about fallacies of logic, counter arguments. It's important to have an argument, and then also entertain the counter argument, okay, even with your own position. Metacognition is a really important skill set. We want our kids to do that. Determine whether two variables are correlated. Understand the importance of reliable data in making an argument and solving a problem. These are just some of the many objectives that kids go through in 7th grade in critical thinking. I just took a smattering of it. And then finally, remember, information literacy and critical thinking has to come together to solve problems. So you're going to see a big portion of what we do in Art of Thinking is problem solving. For example, learn to apply this and apply the steps of problem solving. So our kids know that the first step of problem solving is identifying the problem. Some adults don't do that. No, right? And I fail to do that sometimes, right? Identify the problem. And then, step number 2 is identify the scale and scope of the problem, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a logical thing that kids can learn. It'll help them down the road. Understand that different people may define a problem in different ways, and that's why sometimes effective solutions depend on how you define the problem in the first place. They just need to know that, right? So that when they're trying to solve a problem or they're engaging a group of people to solve problems, they have to understand perspective and how the problem is defined. Predict the consequences of emotional versus logical reaction to the same situation. Oh, this is a challenge for anybody who is in this job. Logical versus emotional challenges to a situation. Understand status quo bias, explain the concept of groupthink, identify benefits and costs, opportunity costs, use data to help choose the best solution, think about the innovator's dilemma, compare and contrast how the same problem can affect people in different communities differently, and then eventually we want our kids to start tackling and start suggesting good solutions to problems. I mean, they're still in school, but we want them to start thinking like that, thinking big, because this is the generations that's going to solve a lot of these key problems that are impacting our world right now. So we want them to be good problem solvers, good thinkers. So that's it. That's what critical thinking, art of thinking is about. And I know that was fast, and that there's no soundbite for this, but that's what our kids are learning, your kids are learning in school in art of thinking class. And we're just going to grow our competencies in there.